Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Decoding the Digital World, How to Keep Your Kids Safe and Sound Online. We have a great panel here this evening, and for the next 45 minutes, we're going to have an engaging conversation, and I'd like to introduce them, beginning with myself. My name is Cindy Hallberlin, and I'm the co-chair of the Digital Safety Alliance, which is a national consortium of key stakeholders interested in helping teachers, parents, educators, guardians, and our teens navigate safely the digital world, all its opportunities and its challenges. So now I'd like to introduce you to my other co-chair, Dr. Marisa Azaret, who is a psychologist and chair of the psychology department at Nicklaus Children's Hospital in Miami, Florida. Next, I'd like to introduce Amy Tolman. She's our parent representative from Miami, Florida. And we have Bill Brady, who is the founder and CEO of Troomi. You're going to hear all about Troomi, which is a very exciting company that produces cell phones for our kids and has all sorts of other interesting tools for parents. And finally, last but not least, is Adia Chaudhry, and she is on our teen advisory board, which is part of the Digital Safety Alliance. The reason why it's part of it, because we believe in elevating the voices of those we try to help. So Adia, along with other teams on our board, help us define the issues and the strategies to be safe online. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'm going to start the questions with you, Dr. Azaret. What are the biggest psychological impacts you found from the hundreds of kids that you have been helping over the years with digital issues? How does it impact screen time on their lives?
Thank you, Cindy. And I want to start by saying that there is a lot of positive things about social media, about the digital platforms. Many kids find a sense of community, creativity, connecting with families, with friends. But we need to look at the other side of the story. And we have seen throughout the years the increase in anxiety, in depression, in loneliness, believe it or not, in a sense of sleep. And that's why I don't like to talk too much about mental health, but about health. The lack of exercise, the lack of engaging, the lack of attention, of concentration, and the list goes on and on.
Great. Thanks, Marisa. Amy, as a parent of young children, what issues are you aware of and what concerns do you have when you look at your kids at their young age and how they're growing up in this digital world?
I think my biggest concern is how addictive the devices are and how addictive screen time becomes for them. It's just a warp that sucks them in, and it's very hard to break them out of it. And they have a hard time transitioning from that to the next thing that they need to do. Once they're in it, it's very addictive and hard to kind of get them out of it.
Understood. Bill's not just a founder and CEO of Troomi, he's a father of 5 kids. So you've got 2 very important platforms that you can tell us. Why did you start Troomi? What does it do? And what about your origin story as a parent made you do this or motivated you to do this?
Yeah, thank you. And great to be with everyone tonight. You know, as a dad, I was just standing back and looking at the landscape relative to kids and technology. And like every other parent in America, feeling this paradox. You know, I want my kids to have a phone so I can reach them and they can reach us and they can, you know, have the intended communication. But this understanding that comes with risks. I didn't want them in inappropriate content. I didn't want them being bullied or pursued by predators or getting into some of these issues that Dr. Azaret has described and Amy has nailed on. And it was really looking at the landscape and realizing on one end of the spectrum, you could give your kids at the time, you know, a device that is completely powerful, wide open. It could do anything and everything. More and more parents are realizing that's not the way to go. And on the other end of the spectrum, you know, there were some devices that had come out that were so limited that they just weren't practical. And so we designed Troomi to be a safe phone that would be flexible enough that it could grow with children and give them everything they need without all the garbage.
What do you mean by a safe phone?
So safe in that it gives parents a couple of things. Number one is control. so they can actually set a safe list, for example, that determines who their kids can talk to. And for younger kids, that could be completely locked down. So kids literally can't talk or text with people who aren't on that safe list. But it also has flexibility, so older kids can, determine their contacts by themselves. It has a safe web browser. So if you choose to give your kids internet access, it can be done safely. It keeps kids away from inappropriate content. So no pornography at any age, whether your child is 8 or 15, it's got safeguards to make sure that they're not sending and receiving inappropriate content like that. And content filtering. So you can, keep an eye on what's coming into their device and frankly, what's going out on the device, and make sure that you're being alerted if there's anything that's inappropriate. And if there is something inappropriate, you can even set it so it just doesn't come in. And your
God, it
kids are
sounds fantastic. I wish I had it when my kids were younger. Because there's a lot of worry when you don't have control. So
we hear that a lot, Cindy. I wish this had been around when my kids were growing up. Yeah, that's a common feedback.
Which is a great transition to our resident teen, Adia. Why don't you begin by telling everybody your age, when you got your first cell phone, when you started engaging online, and what do you think about this approach?
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for the question. So I'm currently 18 years old, and I believe I got my first phone in the end of 7th grade, beginning of 8th grade, which is, I think, a little bit later than the average teen gets their phone. I was not on social media until freshman year of high school, but there were pros and cons that I noticed when I started entering like Instagram and Snapchat. One of the cons was that you really see a filtered view of everything online, and when you're younger, that filtered view seems real and it's not real, and it does cause you to think that, oh, maybe that, like maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe this isn't going well in my life, when you see these filtered posts online, or you see curated images of your friends. So I think that was a con that I noticed very quickly entering onto social media. But I also saw pros because it did allow me to connect with friends during the pandemic. I can't imagine being home that year and not being able to be constantly connected to everybody that I knew. And it's solely because of those social media platforms that I didn't feel completely disconnected from everybody else.
So what a great answer, because you brought out exactly what Dr. Azaret said from the beginning. It's not all good and it's not all bad. So, and your point, Bill and Amy, it's here to stay. So how do we use it wisely? We're going to switch to Dr. Azaret to ask about the impact on self-esteem. But first, I have to follow up on one of your questions. You said you got your phone a little late, like in 7th grade. Did you pressure your parents to get it earlier because your friends were getting it earlier?
I did. Most kids I noticed started getting it at the end of 5th grade. And my parents were completely against it, so I did not get one until the end of middle school. But I remember it was definitely a little bit hard when you're like the only kid who doesn't have a phone, and it does give you a sense of FOMO, or like I'm missing out on something.
Which is a great transition to you, Dr. Azaret. So that FOMO, that curating of the perfect image, how does all that bombardment of digital information impact kids' self-esteem?
I think, Adia, you mentioned that, you referenced that in terms of that we live in an era of comparison. We compare ourselves to other kids, to other parents. Let's not forget about that, because the parents are also comparing themselves to other families, and the parents' family is going on vacation and they are having a great time, and we are not doing the same. So it's ingrained in our culture, in our modern culture. So, but we lose perspective that a lot of it, like you mentioned, Nadia, is unreal. I remember that once I went to this party, and I went to the restroom and I saw teenagers taking selfies to post, and they kept taking the selfies, and I say, how many are you going to take? And one of them, at least 100. To be able to post one. So waiting for that perfect image. And that
Ah.
brings down the self-esteem. And sometimes girls, particularly girls, we know that they are highly affected by it. And it's also cultural. We women, the need to be pretty, the need to be thin, or the need to, so we find that, and that erodes little by little, or not that little, your self-esteem for girls and also for boys, but particularly we're seeing that with girls. And you mentioned that.
With boys, Dr. Azaret, do you see more issues around gaming than necessarily this comparison, or are you also seeing boys becoming more obsession with their appearance, their bodybuilding, and other such related issues?
You see both, but gaming is a huge thing with boys, looking strong, and but you see both, and you see the self-esteem. I don't want to separate that much the sexes, but you find that boys are affected because of the gaming.
Great. Amy, as a parent of young children, you've shared with us before, what are some of the things you've found just really challenging, as even of recently, of having your kids outside and trying to get them to enjoy what's there instead of digital? Share that experience.
I mean, literally, this happened at 6:50 before I walked in. I had to take my son's iPad away because he knew I had this meeting. I have a babysitter here to take care of him, and I said, you can have 20 minutes on the iPad, and then you're going to go upstairs and start to read books. And there was a immediate pushback of, but 20 minutes, that's not enough. Da, 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 da. He doesn't get screen time during the week. Tonight was an exception because tomorrow they're celebrating a religious holiday at the school, so there's no homework tonight. So tonight was kind of an exception to the rule. Otherwise, he would know there's no screen time at all. So I was already letting him doing something out of the ordinary. And then it was like, now he's pushing it even further. And I said, you know what? Forget it. You can watch TV. You and your sister can agree on a show. I'm not going to play I'm not going to be in a war with you over the iPad. It's just.
Yeah, it becomes another tug of war, even at your age, when you're talking about, as young as 8, and then your age, Adia, when you're wanting it in the 5th grade, there are different challenges as you go. Which leads me back to you, Bill, to talk about at Troomi, in addition to the phone, you developed something recently called Troomi. Tell us about it and why you went from Troomi's, safe phones to Troomi.
Yeah, from the very beginning, we've been extremely invested from a mission perspective in helping parents raise happy, vibrant, confident children. That's our goal. And understanding that begins with some of the safe aspects, creating safe aspects to using technology. Getting into it, it was just very clear that you cannot decouple good, digital safety, digital wellness with positive mental health. They're inextricably connected, meaning, the more unhealthy one's digital habits are, the more opportunity or likelihood there may be for them to have challenges with their mental health. And so we wanted to give kids another avenue to on top of having parents they can talk to and other trusted adults in their lives. We wanted to give them an opportunity to be able to talk about questions they have or things they may be dealing with, but to do that in a safe way. We created an AI mental health chatbot called Troomi that's extremely guardrailed, so it's not going to have inappropriate conversations with kids. And it's extremely positive focused, so it doesn't ever assume that a child is having challenges. It's going to talk about challenges if the child brings them up, but it doesn't feel heavy. It feels very positive and encouraging. And if kids are asking Troomi questions, the responses they get are going to encourage critical thinking. They're going to encourage emotional resilience. And it's very trained by 16 different mental health practitioners. So it's
wow.
And it's only ever improved with human intervention. It's not the kind of AI that's always teaching itself. It's only governed by these doctors and professionals. On the backside of that, Troomi is providing parents with insight into how their kids are doing. So inside of our parent portal, where the parent is already going to manage the child's device and get insight into their child's digital habits and activity, now they can get insight into how their child is doing. What are their predominant emotions? What are insight into things that they may be thinking about or dealing with? And our parents are loving it. Just the extra insight. It doesn't replace parenting. It's certainly not a therapist. It's certainly not a diagnostic tool, but it gives parents another touch point to have great conversations with their kids.
And that's really what this is about. Again, we're not trying to get rid of social media. We're not trying to get rid of digital platforms. We're trying to help kids navigate. Adia, what's your reaction to that? Knowing that Troomi can be a useful source, but your parents can get the information on the backside. Tell us from a perspective of an 18-year-old, how do you feel about that?
I think that for younger kids, it's really good because a lot of the times younger kids, they can't tell their own emotions apart, and you need that support from your parents or a trusted individual. I do feel that older kids might have trouble putting their true, genuine emotions into the AI, knowing that their parents have access to it. I think it would cause them to think a little bit more before they type, if that makes sense. Is my first reaction to it.
I'll tell you something, and that's really valid, Adia. I'll tell you something that's been surprising to us is across the whole spectrum of kids that are our users, from 8-year-olds up to 17-year-olds. There's already visibility for parents into text messaging, for example. And with my own kids, I'm floored. Like, they know that I can see their texts, and it does not seem to inhibit them at all. And we get that feedback. They know it's there, but it's in the background, and they're not really thinking about it.
General terms, what happens, Bill, in general terms, is that kids forget.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
They forget, and they know that the parents are reading or looking at it, and they forget. And in answer to you, Adia, also is that I guess that the strong advice is co-using those tools. It's an opportunity to have that conversation with parents and with kids. It's an opportunity to open up the door and say, let's deal with this, or let's look at it, or let's see what we can learn from it. And I think that is an unbelievable opportunity for the kids, because my fear in general terms is that the parents, because it's so difficult and they feel so overwhelmed and they feel that they don't know enough and they feel that it's too much. It's too much information for me as a parent. My fear is that they give up and they say, hey, I'm going to hide from it. I'm going to deny it. And the kids, my fear is that the reaction is, okay, end of the story. I'm not going to talk to you, Mom, or let's not address this because it's conflictive, because you don't know enough. That is my fear. But both of you, what you're mentioning, yes, kids forget that they are being, and they continue texting. It has been proven. But also, as you get older, you need that sense of independence and privacy. And this is who I am. And when I'm ready, Mom, and when I'm ready, Dad, I'm going to share whatever with you.
And I think
go ahead, Adia.
I think that that's like a really good point, because in the end, I think the root solution is having open transparency. If you are transparent with your child and your child is transparent with you, and you've established kind of the trust that technology isn't bad, but we're going to work together to use it safely. I feel like that's what makes all the difference, and that's what makes these tools so effective.
Yeah, very, very well said. Let me give just one really quick example from my own experience, we have a 15-year-old daughter who obviously uses our product, and tragically, at the beginning of this school year, a friend of hers died by suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And our daughter was one of the last people that he talked to, and she had no idea, just absolutely no idea that he was in distress of any kind. And you can imagine the feelings of guilt and remorse and confusion that she had. And our relationship with her is such that she came home and immediately talked to, her mom and dad. And we made a point of talking about this on a regular basis over the next couple of weeks, just to make sure she was doing okay. And it got to the point where she stopped talking about it, and then we stopped talking about it. And it was a few weeks later that I got insights from Trudy. Hey, Ainsley is still worried about this, and she's still
Wow.
thinking about it. And it was enough insight that we could go back and say, hey, how are you doing in regard to your friend? And we were
That
able
is
to talk more
fascinating.
about it and consider, do we need to, would it be helpful for you to talk to someone? And without that additional insight, we would have just let it go. And it was just super helpful. It didn't replace us as parents, and it didn't, but it gave her just this continued avenue for expressing some of her thoughts and asking questions.
Hold on to that, because we want to unpack that a little from a psychological perspective. But I want to turn to you now, Amy. There's another chatbot that we just launched at the Digital Safety Alliance, which is our AI assist for parents to go to get information when they're stuck, right? Which is very different from what Trudy is doing. It's like when you're on the go and you have the phone, you can ask the questions. Amy, I know you've used it. Give us an example of when it makes sense to use that as a parent.
Well, I think to piggyback off of what Bill is saying, like, it doesn't replace parenting. It's just in your pocket, on the go, just as another tool to help you kind of have guidance in the moment, to just send off a question and get an answer. And then it's just something that you can use to formulate an opinion and build upon, like maybe an instinct that I had anyway as a parent. And I think that the main thing that's tricky right now is the kids that we're raising are being born into this, which is unprecedented, and that's why for me, my kids are still young, but I wanted to get involved in this right away, is because there's no roadmap to this. My kids are 5 and 8, and here they are, and this is their reality. And this is the reality of parents today. And it's nice to have all these different resources to kind of approach these challenges, because nobody has the answers. We're just kind of learning as we go.
So let's take the chatbot and let's go back to Adi's original comment. She doesn't know what she would have done during the pandemic without social media, right? The isolation was great. Now it's post the pandemic. Chatbots are emerging a lot. I'm sure many people on this webinar and our esteemed panelists have read the stories about people building relationships with these chatbots, relying on them not just for questions, but then they begin to believe that the chatbot becomes their friend, their advisor. And as you know, Marisa, people are even going to chatbots now as their therapists, and then bringing the comments the chatbot makes to their therapist to challenge them. So my question to you, as our clinical psychologist, is this emergence of chatbots human nature as learning from you and relationships? Do you believe it's going to have an impact socially on people as they become more and more as a part of a teen or even adults? Recently, there was a woman written up who had fallen in love with her chatbot that was married and shared that love affair, which was obviously just with the chatbot with her husband. So how does that impact us socially?
I wish I had a magic and tell you what's going to happen in the future. I think that technology is here to stay. I think it's going to be part of us. I think Amy mentioned something that is extremely important, that is a big change in our lives. And I think the challenge is to adjust to assess that change, to adjust to that change and move forward. And I think, yes, it will. particularly kids or adults that live in remote areas, they might benefit from therapy via a chatbot or any other technology. But I think part of what makes us human is the need for that smile, the need for that touch, the need for that hug, the need, and I never ever want parents, particularly parents, to forget about that. The children are maybe attracted to that technology. It makes sense. It's something new. It's something that can be fun, but they still need that hug. They still need that encouragement. There is not the strongest reinforcement for a human being, particularly a child and yes, a teenager, is for a parent to say, thank you. I'm proud. I love it. Things like that, that attention, that presence, it's what makes a difference. And I think that technology has a place, but as of now, I doubt it very much that it will replace our contact as human beings.
Adia, as our teen advisory board member, what do you think this interjection with your friends of chatbots and more AI assistants is having to your social circle?
I definitely think it does. It has made an impact in the way that it feels uncommon that people would turn to chatbots when they're having an issue or when they want to talk something out. But it's actually much more common than we think it is. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of friends who have turned to ChatGPT when, let's say, your friend is busy and you really just need to think out your thoughts or think out an idea. People do have turned to chatbots, so it is becoming a thing that's a little bit more normalized. Like I know Snapchat has a brand new feature where it's like it's basically like one of your friend contacts is an AI, and when you talk to it and you send it snaps, it responds back like it's your friend. So
wow, like a specific friend, not generic friend.
Right, and you customize the friend and their name and everything. It completely digitized friend on Snap. And so things like that I think have made a little bit of an impact, but I also agree with Dr. Azaret that I don't think it takes away the human interaction that we have with each other, because the human input you just can't find from AI, and like the satisfaction of thinking through your ideas, meeting new people, getting excited about interactions, you just can't find on like ChatGPT or the Snapchat AI. It doesn't give you that same sense of feeling.
Okay, let's switch a little bit of a topic that I think is really interesting. As you mentioned, ChatGPT. Everybody knows today that many people use ChatGPT not just as an AI assist, like you said, which is very interesting to create friends, but also to help you with schoolwork, for instance, right? And I know, Adia, you're a very good student, and Bill, you have kids, and Amy, you have kids in school, and Marisa and I raised them up too. How do you think the advent of these tools in technology, which is you can argue shortens research? You know, I'm going to show my age when I tell you, I remember Encyclopedia Britannica was a big,
I do too.
Right? Where my parents were worried, right? We'd be like cribbing on, these incredibly expensive, heavy books in our house or the way we did research. Well, now it's ChatGPT. And so the question is, and I want everybody to go around the room on this, around the screen. Do you think this is making people lazier, less smarter? What are the aspects? We're going to start with you, Adia, and then we're going to go around.
I think that the impact on younger kids is like, it's undeniable. It is making kids less willing to do their homework, because in their shoes, it's like, I have this 3-hour assignment, but if I put it into ChatGPT, it's done in 10 minutes. And then I have 2 hours to play. So it's like, it is making kids less willing to do their work, because it provides a tool to kind of bypass like any stress or any challenge or anything that'll keep you from enjoying. So I do think that kids are using it more and more. I know a lot of people I know use it for homework, to kind of speed up the process, or like if you're taking lots of hard classes, people will use it just to be able to get by. faster and have more time for themselves and be less stressed. But I do think that it takes away the actual value of learning, and it really pushes the get your work done just to get it done kind of mindset instead of going to school to learn the topic. So I think it has like a detrimental impact education wise. I know that people say it has its pros, it cuts your research and does things like that, but I think that for it to be a pro, it has to be used very properly and carefully, and it has to be taught how exactly AI should be used responsibly. I think until then, I see more detrimental impacts than positive ones.
Amy, as a parent of young kids, are your kids turning to it at all? Are they aware that there's that thing for them to do their homework too? For your 8-year-old, or that hasn't come up yet?
He would use Hey Google. Like if he doesn't know how to do something, he'll say, Hey Google, and he'll recite a question off of a math worksheet. So essentially, yeah, he's figured out
Wow. And then it
a
just
way to get answers. He had a math worksheet the other day, and he goes, I think I'm just going to use a calculator to do this. And I said, if you use a calculator, do you think that your teacher would be okay if you use a calculator to do the whole worksheet? And he goes, well, no. And I was like, well, then you can't use a calculator to do it. Then the calculator is doing it for you. So I think that, I mean, it's interesting, Adia, what you're saying about there's ways to do it. There's ways to do your homework faster. But at what point does it become like cheating on assignments?
You get to the point, Amy.
What my son was going to do to ask, hey, Google the answer, that's just cheating. And that's not going to teach him how to do the math problems, and it's not going to prepare him for an exam.
Oh, very interesting. Bill, what about your kids?
So I think as we look at this question, it's not just ChatGPT. I think all of this technology has changed the way we learn, the way we think, the way we communicate.
Yeah.
I go back to my undergrad studies 30 years ago, which is alarming to say. And, even back then, before cell phones were ubiquitous, before the advent of social media, going back to my studies in communication, I was already concerned about the way our communication patterns are changing because of technology. And if you look at the way that young people learn to communicate today versus 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's dramatically different. And I think that when left unchecked, technology has this dehumanizing effect on us. We've got to make sure that we keep it as a tool that can improve efficiency. Like ChatGPT, I use it as a professional, and it can improve efficiency and make things, go faster. But I loved that Adia called out that if that's all you do, it robs you of the learning opportunity. And that's what I've stressed with my kids is it's okay to use the tool after you know how to do it yourself. But if you just go to the tool, you're not learning anything. And that's the conundrum. It's an absolute conundrum that we've gotten ourselves into. Massive potential for the tool, but my goodness, we're shortchanging ourselves if we don't learn how to think, if we don't learn how to create, if we don't learn how to communicate ourselves. I think the long-term negative outcome of that is going to become obvious.
Can I add
Oh, I
something?
think, go ahead, Adia.
Yeah, so I also just wanted to add, like, we're talking about this like for more like bigger assignments, things like that, but there's also small things that people have started using ChatGPT for, which when I first would see it online, I would find it funny. So I remember I was scrolling on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I saw a post, and in the post, in the comment section, it said, here is a tailored comment for this post, and then it had the person's comment underneath, meaning it was pulled from ChatGPT and copy pasted and put there. And it's ironic to me because social media is a place where it's a place of creativity, where it's like your original creativity, your content is what you're putting out. So it was ironic to me that this AI created comment is what's being put out. I'm not sure if I explained that correctly, but I just wanted
Yes,
to
yes.
that I thought that was a bit ironic. And
Very
it goes
ironic.
to show how deep
Yeah.
our usage of AI is getting, to the point where even for a one-line comment, people are using ChatGPT.
And Bill, you mentioned something extremely important. Adults are using it. The other day, I read a research that most adults don't say that, they say that they are not using ChatGPT, but they found out that more than 85% of adults use it, but they don't say it, particularly to their bosses. Okay.
Yes, they want to get credit for it.
Correct. So they don't use it. And the fact is that before I mentioned that we live in an era of comparison, but we also live in an era of impulsivity. We want things.
True.
We want things immediately. We want, so that goes to your point of area of, I have 2 hours. If I can do this in 10 minutes, done. Let's go to the next one. So I guess the greatest challenge is for the educational system. It's something needs to change, and they need to change fast. And I feel sorry for the teachers, and I feel sorry for the universities, because the technology is advancing so much that encouraging that critical thinking, and from very young age, is quite a challenge. It is quite a challenge. So when people say, no, it's the responsibility of the parents, the responsibility of the teachers, it's the responsibility of all of us. I always say that we alone cannot do it. We need you guys, Aria. We need technology like Bill's, and we need parents and teachers, and obviously politicians, and obviously the big companies. It takes a village to kind of, and this is quite a change in our lives. I have never, ever seen anything like this. And it doesn't surprise, we used to talk about a generation, 20 years, 25 years, major changes. Now it's 5, maybe
Not
3.
even 5, every 72 days, the amount of data turns over. Think about that in days. I mean, it's shocking.
How do you address that from a parent's perspective, education, entertainment?
That's great. We're almost out of time, but we're going to do a whip around, and I want each of you, we're going to start with you, Amy, to give what advice you would give on how to decode the digital world and help our kids stay safe online. So as a parent perspective and a member or representative on the Digital Safety Alliance, what piece of advice would you give out there? We're going to go around the group.
I would say one of the most major things I've learned about recently is the importance of protecting your data and privacy. And when you log on to a website and asks, are you okay with cookies? Look into that and see what trackers now you're attaching, what you're allowing. You're basically selling your data, allowing them to market you and try to sell you more and more and more and more. And it's like my social media has become retail with some social component, but it's more often than not like this doom scroll of like, this thing I should buy, this thing I should buy. And that's because these companies are buying up information on what I might want to buy.
I'm so glad you raised that. That's such a critical point. And by the way, you should all be aware that it was some genius marketer's idea to call them cookies so that you would positively think about it. Oh, it's cookies. That's yummy. That's delicious. Who doesn't like cookies? And it worked for a long time until you raise awareness. Bill, thank you, Amy. What's your suggestion?
Number 1, absolutely, is to be intentional. Make decisions that work for your family, that are aligned with your goals, your family values. It's okay to be the weird family who's not giving their kids iPhones. It's okay to be the weird family that's delaying social media. Do what works for you. I always tell parents, just because everyone else is doing it has never been a good reason to do anything. So decide what works for you. And as you do introduce technology, do it a step at a time. Let your kids grow into it. You don't have to give them everything at once. Be intentional.
Great. Before I go to you, Adia and Marissa, are you both comfortable? I know you have the portal and you obviously are Bill, but reading your kids' text messages, when we talk about privacy, are you okay with looking at them?
You're asking, who are you asking?
I'm asking Amy and then Bill from a parental viewpoint. Now, your kids may not be texting yet, Amy, so it may be too soon. But Bill, are you okay? I mean, you have the back portal, but even without that, are you okay reading their information?
100%. In fact, the paradigm in our family is that we're giving you this phone to use, and it's a privilege to use it. But it's our phone.
That's right.
And we set that expectation from the beginning.
That's your intentionality.
That is the key. You're clear. You set the limits. You explain it to your kids, and that's the way to go about it. That is basically the way to go about it. Not behind the kids' back, because that backfires 100% of the time.
Amy, you wanted to add something, and we're going to close with Adia.
When my sister and I were teenagers and we got our driver's license, it was the same philosophy. The cars were my parents' cars. We had the privilege of they allowed us to use their cars, and if we didn't come home by curfew, the keys were gone. If we didn't do what we needed to do, the keys were gone, because these were their cars that they were letting us use. And I totally agree with you. I think that that's a perfect philosophy to adapt to the technology. This is my phone. This is my iPad. You're welcome to use it. And then as soon as our trust is broken in whatever way, I'm sorry, you don't get the privilege of.
There's a consequence.
Yeah.
Great.
Privilege of using that thing anymore. And I totally agree with you, Bill.
Wonderful. Adia, take it home. We're just over time, and you're a voice of the teens. What's your advice to your friends and the people that are watching, adults?
I think my biggest advice is don't look at technology that it's bad. Don't look at it that it's good. Keep an open mind when you're approaching ChatGPT, when you're approaching any type of technological platform, because in the end, it like Bill, Amy, Dr. Azaret, as you said, like, it is really about open communication. When you maintain that open communication and transparency, and you build a trust that you can share, like parents and kids, that you can share between each other what's going on, I think that's what creates like a safe online environment. So if we approach it with that openness and like willingness to welcome it safely, I think that's what's important. So that's my biggest suggestion, to be open towards it and not close yourself off from it, but give it a chance, basically.
So thank you all. I want to give everyone a real piece of gratitude for giving us your time this evening and your insights. I think the conversation was great. We hope those who are listening got something out of it. Be safe out there. Take all this advice, be intentional, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.